Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video I have a full tank guide for you on the M103A1. So this is a Western Alliance Era 1 heavy tank. It leads on from the T34 Heavy and it leads on to the M103A2, which is the first tank in this line in Era 2. We are going to head over now to Excel, have a look at the stats of the M103A1, and we are firstly going to compare it to the previous tank in this line, the T34 Heavy, and then we will be comparing to two other Era 1 heavy tanks with similar hit points to see how the M103A1 holds up. I'll talk to you about my commander and equipment setup and how that affects the stats of the M103A1, and then I'll talk you through the armor profile of this heavy tank, and then I have 4 gameplays for you at the end to demonstrate how this heavy tank performs on the battlefield. Everything is timestamped, so you can skip forward to the section that you wish to look at. So we're first now going to head over to sheet 2, where I've got the stats of the M103A1 here on the left and the previous tank, the T34 Heavy, to see what has improved and what hasn't improved, and then we will jump back over to sheet 1. So in terms of the M103A1, you have 2,200 hit points. That is 300 more than you had on the T34 Heavy, and you also have 15 meters more view range. It's not a massive change, but you know, every little helps, and the hit points definitely keep you in the battle just that little bit longer, allow you to take that extra shot, whereas you wouldn't have been able to with the T34 Heavy. In terms of the mobility, you have the same 908 engine power, however you have a better power to weight with the M103A1 by a small margin at 15.72. You also have a better top forward speed at 48.3 kilometers an hour and a slightly better reverse speed at 20.9 kilometers an hour. And lastly, in terms of the mobility, you have a much better hold reverse at 34 degrees a second compared to the T34's 26 degrees a second, which allows you to get your hull around your strongest part of your armor to your opponents and hopefully bounce some more shells. And you have 4 more degrees a second turret traverse, which is nice for getting your turret and your gun around on your enemy. In terms of the firepower then on the M103A1 fully upgraded, you will have a 120mm caliber gun, which is the same as you had on the T34 Heavy. You fire AP, heat and HE out of this gun on the M103A1, the only difference being the premium rounds on the T34 Heavy are APCR, so they're going to have better shell velocity, but they do have the same 340mm of penetration. In terms of your standard AP rounds on the M103A1, 1067 meters a second shell velocity, so that's a jump up from the T34 Heavy, and you also have 7mm more penetration. It would have been nice to have a little bit more, but every little does help. And you have the same 450 alpha damage. In terms of your premium rounds on the M103A1, they are heat as opposed to APCR on the T34 Heavy, slightly slower shell velocity at 1143 meters a second, and you have 340mm of penetration, so that's the same as the APCR. I would have preferred APCR on the M103A1 as heat is quite difficult to use sometimes in Cold War, a little bit easier in Era 1, due to the fact there aren't any tanks that have lots and lots of composite sort of explosive reactive armor to protect against ATGM, so they are more usable in Era 1, and 340mm is plenty, and again the same alpha damage, 450. And lastly, in terms of your HE rounds, you have worse shell velocity than you had on the T34 Heavy. You have 762 meters a second, the same penetration at 60mm, and the same alpha damage, a nice jump to 580 if you come across some lightly armored tanks. And lastly, in terms of the gun handling, DPM, gun depression and gun elevation, in terms of your aim time, you have 2 seconds, the same as you had on the T34 Heavy. You have slightly better accuracy at 0.35, and you have a better DPM, 2390 compared to 2308 on the T34 Heavy. You have an 11.3 second reload, which is 0.4 seconds better than the T34 Heavy. 1 more round to take into the battle, and the same 10 degrees of gun depression and 15 degrees of gun elevation. So that's it for the stats compared to the T34 Heavy. A nice jump there in terms of hit points and your mobility, and a little bit in terms of your DPM. How does it compare to other Era 1 heavy tanks. Well, I've got two premium tanks to compare the M103A1 to, the FV4 201 T35E1 and the WZ11166. All three of these vehicles have 2,200 hit points. Let's see how the stats of the M103A1, the tech tree tank, holds up to a couple of Era 1 premium heavy tanks. You have the joint best view range at 445 meters with the FV4201, better than the WZ111. In terms of mobility, you can see here that you do have the best engine power and the best power to weight, which means you do get up hills better than the other two tanks, and you do get up to your top speed a lot quicker. In terms of your top speed, you don't have the best that goes to the WZ111, but that has a poor power to weight and very rarely reaches its top speed, apart from on flat ground, and you have slightly better than the FV4201. In terms of reverse speed, you have the joint best with the FV4201, much better than the WZ. Hold reverse, you have not quite as good as the FV4201, not miles apart, and you are much better than the WZ111 at getting your hold around to your enemy. And in terms of your turret traverse, again not as good as the FV4201, but better than the WZ111, so not too bad there for the M103A1. In terms of the firepower of all of these vehicles, the M103A1, as we have discussed, has a 120mm caliber gun. The FV4201 has a 90mm and the WZ111 has a 122mm caliber gun, so you'd expect it to have higher alpha damage, but that isn't the case. As you can see, the M103A1 has the best alpha damage on all three of its round, 450 on your standard and premium and 580 with the HE. The 122 on the WZ only has 390 on your standard and premium and 530 on your HE, and the FV4201 down there with a 90mm caliber gun, 280 on the standard and premium and 370 alpha on the HE. In terms of shell velocity, you have better than the WZ in your standard rounds, not quite as good as the FV4201, but you do have the best penetration in this comparison, which is nice, meaning you don't have to fire many, if any, premium rounds at your opponents. In terms of your premium rounds, the FV4201 is miles ahead in terms of shell velocity, as it does have APF SDS rounds. This allows it to snipe a lot better than the M103A1, and down there at the bottom, the heat rounds on the WZ111 at 820 meters a second. So you do have to practice leading with the M103A1. However, you can get to a level where it isn't too bad, but at long ranges, you will struggle with the shell velocity compared to things like the FV4201. And again, in terms of penetration and alpha, you have the best in this comparison. You have much better than the FV4201, which only has 304mm, and you have 20mm more than the heat rounds on the WZ111. Lastly, again, best alpha damage with your HE rounds. You have the worst shell velocity, so you have to give plenty of lead, and you have the worst penetration, so make sure you're aiming at very lightly armored targets. I don't really fire any HE rounds, I just stick to the AP in most of my battles. In terms of the gun handling then and the DPM, you have a 2-second aim time on the M103A1, not quite as good as the FV4201, but that does have a smaller caliber gun, and you have a much better aim time than the WZ111. In terms of accuracy, again, the FV4201 comes out on top, but you want miles behind, and you are much better than the WZ111. Again, you have a DPM which is worse than the FV4201, but you do have the best alpha damage and a better DPM than the WZ111. So what you want to do is use that higher alpha damage to trade with your opponents. Try not to get into a DPM battle, because you will lose against a lot of other medium tanks and heavy tanks with smaller caliber guns like the FV4201. 11.3 second reload, which is slightly longer than the WZ. However, the WZ is a higher caliber gun. I really should have coloured them both in red, and I will do that now. And of course, the reload is better on the FV4201 at 6.4 seconds. It stands to reason you are going to have less ammunition as you've got a higher caliber gun. You have 45 rounds, the same as the WZ111, and the FV4201 out there at front with 80 rounds. in terms of gun depression, joint best with the FE4201, meaning that you are very good on a ridgeline and you do have some nice turret armor to use. So definitely try and get hull down where possible. Twice as good as the WZ111, which is very, very hard to use on many different ridgelines on the maps. In terms of gun elevation, you have the worst at 15 degrees. It's not a massive inconvenience, but do watch out for it when you're trying to shoot at tanks that are far above you. Best goes to the WZ111 at 23 and the FE4201 in the middle there at 20 degrees of gun elevation. But the take home from what you see here, you have the joint best hit points, you have the joint best view range, you have very, very nice mobility for the armor that you have on this vehicle, and you do have better hull armor than on the FE4201, and you outstrip the WZ111 in terms of your mobility. You are the king of alpha damage. Shell velocity isn't the best, but it's definitely not the worst, and you just have to make it work. Very nice standard pen and very good premium pen as well, with pretty poor HE rounds for your higher caliber gun. Pretty mediocre gun handling, but pretty nice for the size of the caliber of the gun. 2390 DPM isn't too bad. Very nice gun depression to use on a ridgeline. So that's it in terms of the stats of the M103A1. I'll now talk you through my command and equipment setup, and then we'll get stuck into the armor profile of this vehicle. So in terms of what equipment I ran when I was grinding this tank, I ran the improved ventilation, advanced loader and gun stabilizer, and with my commander I ran 6th Sense, Born Leader, rapid loading, steady aim, rapid aim, snapshot, run and gun, armor angling and track mechanics. So in terms of the equipment, advanced loader improving the DPM, and the vents to improve the DPM and the gun handling, as well as the view range and gun stabilizer to help out that pretty mediocre accuracy on this higher caliber gun. And in terms of the commander skills, 6th Sense and Born Leader is standard on every one of my commanders, along with rapid loading to help the DPM. 4 gun handling skills to get the most out of this gun. Armor angling, because I'm going to be brawling, taking some damage, trying to reduce the amount of damage I receive by 5%. And track mechanic, don't want to get caught out in the open, because although you want the slowest heavy, you definitely aren't the quickest thing in Era 1, and you have very, very poor concealment, and with true vision, you're a very large target for people to be able to see you. If I was going to change anything, I would take out the armor angling and maybe improve the mobility some more by using clutch braking or off-road driving. Or if you're so inclined, you could use Deadeye to improve the chances with your AP and heat rounds of dealing damage to crew and modules, and as you have a higher caliber gun, you have a slightly higher chance of doing that. So if you run the same setup as me, you'll be looking at a view range of 473 meters, and the only thing that's changed in terms of the mobility is the turret traverse has improved to 33.23 degrees a second thanks to the gun handling skills. And in terms of the gun handling and DPM, aim times dropped to 1.88 seconds, accuracy's dropped quite substantially to 0.29 from 0.35, DPM shot up dramatically to 3,195, and the reload has dropped to 8.46 seconds, I should say, so a massive drop there, and a pretty nice increase on an already pretty decent DPM for a pretty high 120mm caliber gun. So now we're going to talk about the armor, and what we're going to do, we're going to head over to tanks.gg, and this is the sort of PC version of the Tier 9 American World War II heavy tank, the M103, and a lot of the armor plates here are very similar to what we have on the M103A1 in Era 1 of Cold War, barring some minor differences, which I will talk to you about. So I'll talk to you about the differences in the armor first, and then we'll see how effective the armor is on the M103A1. So I'll put up screenshots now of what I'm talking about so you can see what has changed. So ignore the lower plate here on tanks.gg. The lower plate on the Tier 9 American heavy tank is 114.3mm, whereas on the lower plate on the M103A1 it's actually 152mm. The side armour is the same on this vehicle and the M103A1, apart from a section up here which is 50.8mm, and the roof deck on the World War II version is 38.1mm here. However, the roof deck on the Era 1 heavy tank, the M103A1, is 50.8mm. But apart from that, it is pretty much identical. So you're going to be able to see how the armour holds up on this vehicle, and the cupola is slightly different. So definitely watch out for that. The cupola on the M103A1, I'll just scroll to it now, is 152mm, where it is on the World War II 180, so it's actually weaker on the Era 1 heavy tank. So M103A1 pretty much looks exactly like this, with a boat-shaped side. When you're looking at this thing from the front without any gun depression, to be able to go through the cheeks of the turret, you're going to need 350mm of penetration to be able to go through, depending on how flat the surface is you are shooting at. So if it's turning its turret, the flatter parts are going to be easier to go through, around 220 to sort of 300mm of penetration, and you can go through the turret ring there at around 220 to 250mm of penetration. We've just discussed the cupola on the M103A1 is 152mm, so you need around 160 to 200 depending on the angle to be able to go through the cupola, and it gets stronger towards the outsides of the turret because of the rounded nature of this massive turret. It goes up to sort of auto ricochet angles towards the outside, and the part here is about 320, 330 to be able to go through. And in terms of the mantlet, you're going to need very, very high penetration APCR rounds to be able to go through. Heat will just get absorbed, and you're going to need around 290 to 300mm to be able to go through. In terms of the upper plate then, when it's staring you at in the face like it is here, to go for the upper plate you need around 270 to 280mm to go through the middle of the upper plate. There are some ricochet angles towards the corners, and of course when it is angled you shoot the part which is nearest you like this, and you'll be able to go through with slightly over 200mm to 220mm of penetration. In terms of when you are looking down on this upper plate and you are above this tank, you can go through with under 200mm of penetration, but the corners are still auto ricochet angles because they slope downwards, so definitely watch out for that. I'll just make sure this thing is using its gun depression, and remember you have more gun depression on the M103A1 than you do on this Tier 9 American heavy tank in World War II. So the cupola, almost hard to hit when you are using the full extent of your gun depression. And now this turret is an absolute monster. You can still go through some sections underneath the gun with around 250mm, but it's very hard to hit. The outer edges are auto ricochet angles, and the top will be almost always a bounce unless you have around 400mm of penetration. Best place to shoot is under the gun, or if you have high sort of APCR, APF, SDS, shoot as close to the mantlet as possible, and you need around 320 to 350mm of penetration to go through. In terms of the upper plate, when it's angled like this, you can still go through this small section here with around 260 to 280mm of penetration, but there will be auto ricochet angles towards the top parts and the outer edges of the upper plate. And of course, when you're playing this tank, get hull down if possible, just use your turret and you'll be laughing. And in terms of angling, when you are not using your gun depression, you can sort of wiggle at sort of 40 to 45 degrees, trying to get people to bait off the outside. And of course, if you are coming up against this thing, you shoot the flattest part towards you, and if it over angles, you can go through the drive rail into the hole, track it and shoot it in place. In terms of the side armour, you actually can side scrape relatively well thanks to the side armour of this vehicle. It is boat shaped, as you can see, so when you're side scraping like this, you can side scrape against pretty much every gun you are going to come across in this era, in Era 1, apart from things like the FV 4005, who will be able to overmatch your side, especially the parts towards the front of your tank. But for the most part, you can side scrape and brawl pretty quickly. Just watch out, you are a massive target from the side. Even though your turret is rounded and massive and fat, as you can see, you only need sort of around 200 to 250mm on the M103A1 to go through. And of course, the rear of the vehicle is very, very easy to go through. So side scrape, get hull down, use the turret armour, try and hide your cupola, angle and wiggle when you're advancing on your opponents, and just try to get people to avoid shooting your lower plate, which remember is 152mm on the M103A1 in Era 1. So you're going to be needing sort of around 250 to 300mm to go through the lower plate when it isn't angled. So I hope that's helped you with the armor profile of the M103A1. We're now going to head into the first of the gameplay, so I'll see you over in the first gameplay in just a second. So we are here in the first gameplay of the day's video, and we are on Redshire in the M103A1. We have spawned in the northeast corner of the map, and I'm going to make my way over towards the encounter capture circle so we don't get capped out in the first 5 minutes of this battle, as sometimes happens on this map from my experience. And also, even though we have relatively good mobility for such a large heavy tank, we don't have the best mobility, and I want to be able to get to the base if needed to reset. So a lot of our team are still hanging around in the north, and we're going to be making our way over to the ridge lines. We can use our fantastic 10 degrees of gun depression and our turret armor to defend the cap, and we just have to make sure that we do have some support, because if people do come after you as a platoon or as a group, you are very vulnerable in this tank, thanks to the fact that you don't have the best EPM, you don't have an auto loader to sort of combat the auto loaders that can come after you, and those light tanks that can absolutely pester you, like this FV107. Unfortunately for him, he drives into a building or a rock there, which means that we can get a nice big juicy alpha damage bomb there, rolling for 436. So we rolled a little though there, and then we rolled low again, just giving that light tank a little bit of a chance to escape. Hopefully with our third shell we'll be able to take him out. I don't give enough lead, and if I was in a tank that had APF SDS rounds or something with better shell velocity, like a lot of other tanks in Cold War, especially eras 2 and 3, we would have been able to take him out there. So it takes a little while to adjust to the slower shell velocity with the rounds on the M103A1, but you do hit very hard when you do hit, and you do penetrate more often than not with a pretty decent penetration of that 278mm. And as you can see, I don't run any premium heat on the M103A1. I probably should run some on this vehicle. I'm definitely not afraid to use premium rounds on any of my vehicles, as you would have seen from my videos, but it's kind of a habit I didn't want to get into in Cold War, using heat rounds, because in eras 2 and 3 they are largely useless thanks to all the composite armor protecting against ATGMs and heat and HE. So I want to try and use the standard rounds here where possible, so I don't have to rely on anything like that in eras 2 and 3. But in era 1 it definitely would come in useful, especially when you're coming up against other heavy tanks, maybe another M103A1 that's hull down. It would help you out in that regard. But there we did pretty well defending the cap there, going hull down, trying to protect as much of our lower plate as possible. We've picked up 2.5k direct damage and 1193 assistance, and now we're just trying to poke up, get a shot on that Sherman. Unfortunately we are detected, and there is a tank destroyer somewhere on the map that I don't think has been spotted, or at least that I have remembered yet. In case it's an FE4005, that's probably the reason I didn't want to poke any further. You are a very large tank, and very poor concealment and very easy to spot with the True Vision system. So remember, you are always detectable in Cold War, and that's something to remember. In smaller vehicles you can definitely get away with sitting in bushes. In the M103A1 not so much. If you look towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see that I am running large med, large repair, and I run the enhanced smoke screen, which I guess not many people would do in a heavy tank, but because of the DPM of this vehicle not being as good as some other tanks, because light tanks and autoloaders can come after you, sometimes the smoke screen can get you out of a jam, and it can actually help you out more. Maybe if I was an era 2 or era 3 heavy tanks, I'm more likely to use things like combat rations to further improve the DPM and gun handling, or the enhanced hole patch kit to enhance the durability of the heavy tanks in the barrels. But in era 1 I feel like the smoke screen is pretty useful, so that is what I use. But if you were to improve your sort of DPM and gun handling and your view range just that little bit more, then you could run the combat rations, and yeah, you would get the most possible out of this gun. Now popping up here, trying to shoot at the cupola, but I just aim right in the sort of left side of the turret, so that's just my poor aim. And now this Sherman's coming up after us, not really a threat to us unless he gets our side. We've only lost that one shot of damage to that T35E3. T35E3, basically a kind of heavium, is now taken out of the game by the Char 40T. We're up by one tank. We are capturing the base, so they're going to be coming towards us. And I'm just seeing if anyone's coming from the sort of centre in the south. However, the WZ-111, which we compared this tank to in the stats review, if you have watched that, is come round to contest the base. There's 3 tanks there, so hopefully I can now get some extra juicy damage at the end of this game. Nice shot there into the T95E3. We damage his engine, and with this higher caliber gun you are more likely to do that module damage. You have 165 module damage per shell, so very likely to set people on fire, and that is a bonus over lower caliber guns. The tank destroyer is finally spotted, but the house is covering us, so we can poke up and shoot into this T95E3, and it's rinse and repeat with this vehicle. Get hull down, use the 10 degrees of gun depression, don't get into DPM fights, trade 1 for 1, and just try and whittle your opponents down with your higher alpha damage, and also use your armour to bully tanks that have poor penetration. So if I know a tank's got poor penetration and I'm in a situation where I know I can go forward and sort of use my armour, I will do so. So if I'm coming up against tanks that you know are stock because of their hit points, things like that, use that to your advantage, bully your tanks, face hug them, and they kind of struggle to go through your upper hull and your turret. One tank that doesn't struggle to go through this tank is the FE4005. We take a shot there. I was kind of willing at that point. It's very unfortunate if I got ammo racked or set on fire, so I'll take the shot there to get one into the FE4005. And now we can be a little bit more careful because we have preserved our hit points at the start of the battle, and now it's all about trying to feather a shot into the top of the FE4005's turret. Unfortunately for us there, we just sort of misread where the ridgeline is, but he gets taken out by the Centurion too, and that is what this tank looks like on a ridgeline. Very fearsome for Era 1. We finish in 2nd place in that battle. Nice profit with or without a premium account, probably during a silver event, silver with interest I believe. 4 kills, 4.8k direct damage and 1.1k assistance. So that's it for the first game. Now going to head on into the second one. So now we are into the second gameplay of today's video, and we are here on Chow Bang in the M103A1, spawning in the southeastern corner, and I'm going to make my way into position. And yeah, it's not too bad getting into position, pretty decent mobility, and I'm going to be playing relatively aggressively in this game. You can be very confident in the M103A1. It's a very, very powerful tank. It's definitely not immune, and you have to be careful about things like the FE4005 and getting flanked and getting shot at by autoloaders and light tanks, but you definitely can make aggressive pushes. So what we're going to be doing is going out here into the open, and this is another open map like the previous map, so you do have to be aware of your surroundings. Make sure you do have some hard cover and some teammates backing you up. So I'm pre-aiming where I think tanks might be spotted, but I wanted to race here into the centre of the map. So we do have hard cover to our right and left, and we can just poke up here on this ridge line and hopefully spot some tanks. But we do notice this light tank who is behind us. I think he might be going up above us, so we're not going to push out behind us any further. And this is a pretty aggressive location, but it can reward you with some nice assistance early on. So if you push into this location in H4, if you have a tank with good gun depression, pretty decent armor, you can poke up here and sometimes spot tanks that are sat where I'm trying to aim up there towards the hill. A lot of tank destroyers like to sit there, and you also can make some nice pushes towards the enemy's base here. A light tank just got spotted where we were looking, and we are bouncing shells here as we are angled at kind of 40 degrees here, and we are trying to stay hull down where possible. Still keeping an eye on that light tank. T34, which is the tank prior to this tank, comes up. We just rock backwards as he shoots. We put one into him, and he bounces off our superior armour. So in terms of the armour difference between the T34 Heavy and the M103A1, both have pretty decent turrets. However, the hull and the side much better on the M103A1, and yeah, much more durable, especially with those extra slug of hit points 300 more than the T34. Lazily auto-aimed there on the M103A1. Our medium tank here in front of us is bitten off a little bit more than he can chew. Unfortunately for us, he does pop that smoke screen there. Obviously, he's just trying to get out of the way and get out of harm's way. It just means that we aren't able to feather any more targets for the moment until the smoke clears. And now, hopefully, we can start putting our gun to work here. So, just trying to stay hull down. I'm trying to keep moving in between my shots. Don't want to give any tanks easy shots into my weak spots. Type 69-2 is coming after us, so what we're going to do is just track him on that ridge line and that assistance I was talking about in this position. If you have tanks behind you, you can get rewarded with some pretty nice assistance. I was trying to reverse out of the way, rocking the way there, so what we're going to do is go forward behind this hard cover, get one into that T95E3, and he bounces off us, and I'm always trying to angle at my opponents at that 40 to 45 degrees, and yeah, trying to rock backwards and forwards, wiggling on ridge lines backwards and forwards and just hoping they bounce off the hull or the turret. And you can see here that we've already blocked 2.1k damage. T34 is coming after us. Fortunately, we managed to get a shot into his, what I believe is the lower plate there as he was coming over that rock, as he would have done some crushing damage there to us. We are ammo racked, and unfortunately our large repair kit's on cooldown, so hopefully no one rushes us in this situation. We've still got a relatively healthy slug of hit points, but if our ammo rack gets hit again, yeah, we're likely to get sent back to the garage, so being a little bit careful. Getting some spot on assistance there, a nice shot into the turret or just below into the turret ring of that T95E3, and yeah, rinsing and repeating, using this 10 degrees of gun depression, very comfortable on a ridge line and trying to bully other tanks that aren't able to penetrate us or find a weak spot. Reverse here, just enough gun elevation. That 15 degrees nearly caught us out there, but just enough to get one into the Char 25T. He's tracked in place, always going for drive wheel to get that extra assistance. And now with our repaired ammo rack, we are able to advance. It's a pretty close game, but I'm pretty confident with my team's positioning that we should be able to take this one down. So I'm just going to go around this corner, see what is lying in wait. There's one tank destroyer on the enemy team, and always watching out for those FV4005s, because that just does not give a crap about your armor. However, the rest of the tanks you can bully pretty nicely. So we do have a medium tank now behind us and this light tank trying to circle us. Going to free aim our shot there, and we do damage that light tank's ammo rack with our good module damage of 165. And now we're just trying to keep our thickest part of our armor to the most dangerous target, which in this case is the Centurion 2, managing to penetrate us, but we're going to use the weight of our tank, push him out there, he gets taken out, and this is where the smoke screen can come in handy. Tank destroyer above us gets spotted, so we're going to go down into the river here underneath the bridge, and yeah, not going to sing Red Hot Chili Peppers. We're going to wait till the reload, and then we are going to try and find our next target. We're only up by one tank, so it's a pretty close game. Have a Centurion 5-1 on nearly full health there behind us, who is a pretty nice tank with pretty high alpha, so we've got to be careful. We're kind of a two-shot for a lot of tanks that are left in this game. I'm just making my decision now whether I want to stay here, protect our base, or whether I want to go up with my medium and tank destroyer and take out probably the biggest threat in this game to me, the FV4005. So I've made my decision now. I've asked that medium to follow me. Hopefully we can go in and take out this FV4005, get him out of the game. While he's distracted, as it hasn't got a fully reversible turret, we should be able to put a nice juicy shot into the rear of that tank destroyer. Unfortunately, I don't have any HE loaded, otherwise that would have been the perfect opportunity to use it. No armor on that tank destroyer. Yeah, it doesn't really matter if you have no armor, especially when you jump off of cliffs and kill yourself there. Death Reaper living up to his name. And now we're using the bushes here, even though we're a heavy tank, still trying to stay concealed as we're shooting across the map at the Centurion 5-1. You can see there the slower shell velocity with these AP rounds. Quite difficult to actually hit what you're aiming at this kind of long range. You wouldn't be able to kind of do this usually in World War II, as it doesn't have that true vision system. But we're just trying to get as many shots here as possible whilst we are undetected. so that when we are detected, hopefully they're on a lower amount of hit points, so we're actually able to take them out of the battle. Asking my medium and tank destroyer hopefully to do some spotting for us, as they do have a little bit more mobility and chance to stay concealed than we do. And yeah, if we get spotted, there's a good chance that we will get taken out. So wait a little bit, and then we're going to push as our tank destroyer is going in and go back towards our base if the enemies decide to try and cap us out. Unfortunately for our friendly medium tank, the T34 E3 has gone in and has caught up with the two enemy medium tanks. We get detected there and we take a big hit, so we're on 244 hit points. Can't go up there again because we're just going to be taken out, so I'm going to have to go the long way around and try and help out our friendly medium tank. That's one of the problems with playing this tank. You're so large, no concealment, your view range isn't the best, so you can struggle if you are out in the open. I popped the smoke screen there as we would have got detected by that medium who is trying to reposition. Going to come up behind this M47, get him out of the game, and now it's about trying to get as many guns out of the game as possible before they all gang up and take us out of the game. So our friendly tank destroyer is putting rounds into the Centurion here. We're going to try and come from a different angle, and hopefully this M47 is distracted. A lazily auto aim where I definitely should have aimed that, and we probably would have got the kill. Medium's coming after us. I'm going to hide behind this destructible cover, try and confuse this Centurion 5-1. And again, lazily auto aim where I should have aimed. I thought that was an easy shot, but it went high and ricocheted off, meaning that I get taken out. But fortunately, we did provide a distraction, and Matteo manages to take him out in his T35 E3. So we finish in the MVP slot in that game, still make a profit with about a premium account. First class, 1619 base XP, 5 kills, 5.8k direct damage, 1.3k assistance, and we blocked a whopping 2.8k damage. So that's it for the second game there. Now we're going to head on into the third. So you're joining me here on Dukla Pass in the M103A1, 1.5 minutes into this battle. We've basically just been driving around in circles up on this higher ground trying to find someone to shoot at. All of our team have just basically sat where they spawned, and I'm not going to be the one to be able to go forwards on this open map and do the spotting. I'm a large, heavy tank with no concealment, easy target and pretty mediocre view range, so we're just going to have to sit here, be patient, and hopefully the enemy will come to us. Fortunately, there's no capture circles in this battle, and we can sit here, use our 10 degrees of gun depression, and put shots when we are reloaded into the enemy tanks. We take out the enemy M103A1, probably the most dangerous heavy tank on the enemy team, and yeah, the enemy have fallen right into our trap here. They have come into where we have spawned sort of one by one, and we're able to get shots at them. Very hard to hit tanks like the FE107 there. Very quick, very nimble, on the move with this mediocre shell velocity, but it's good practice for some of the guns that you will come across, mainly in World War II, but sometimes in Cold War. If you wanted to have that extra little bit of shell velocity, the heat rounds on this tank do have slightly better shell velocity at 1,143 meters a second compared to 1,067 meters a second, so that would be an option. And of course you wouldn't lose any penetration over distance with the heat rounds as well. I don't carry any, but that definitely might be an option for you should you wish that extra shell velocity and penetration. So T95 E3 sort of comes round the corner, very dangerous medium tank. We put one into him and we immediately angle at 40 to sort of 45 degrees. We bounced his round, as what happens is they come round, auto aim, centre of mass of this tank is going to be the upper plate, and you bounce, whereas they should just be trying to aim for your lower plate, and they would be able to go through more often than not. Unfortunately, as we backed up, as that T95 E3 came around the corner, an FE 4005 put a nasty shell into us, reduced our health by half, so now we have to be a little bit more careful. A little bit of revenge now, maybe on the FE 4005 that shot us. We're using this dead wreck as some nice hard cover, side scraping off, trying to minimise the amount of the tanks, or the amount of my tank that the enemy can shoot at. We are outnumbering the enemy now by a ratio of 2 to 1, so now is the time to use the rest of our hit points, be a little bit more aggressive, go forward and see what we can get out of this game. And yeah, this is basically M103A1 101. You find a ridgeline, use your gun depression, try and bully tanks with poor penetration, or you haven't fully upgraded, use your hit points and put some nice alpha damage bombs into your opponent. And yeah, it's a pretty nice simple grind towards the M103A2, which is a whole different kettle of fish. In Era 2 with the ATGMs, yeah, it's not so fun as this tank is in Era 1. I'd go as far as to say this is probably the best heavy tank in Era 1, from my opinion anyway. The easiest to play for the majority of the player base. If you like DPM, you might do well in like the FV4201 that we compared this tank to in the stats part of this video, but this has the all-round better armour, some nice alpha damage, decent standard penetration, and yeah, there's not much more you can ask for. Try and get a shot there into the drive wheel of that FV4005, but we still managed to penetrate the rear of that tank. Another one here, going to go for the drive wheel so we get all of the extra juicy assistance, extra XP to grind towards the Era 2 M103A2 a lot quicker. And yeah, whilst we are sat here, the Centurion 2 sat behind that rock, got farmed by the Char 25T, and we're getting all of the juicy assistance and damage on this FV4005. And in a quick game there, with 2 kills on Dukla, power second on our team, a profit with or without a premium account, 3.7k direct damage, 3.3k assistance, 1239 base XP in a 5 minutes and 34 second battle. So that's it for the third game. We're now going to head on into the fourth and final battle of today's video. So now we are into the fourth and final gameplay of today's video, and we are here on Vineyards in the M103A1. And on Vineyards, I usually make my way sort of into the centre towards the north, use the ridge lines and try and get some shots at tanks that are making their way into position. However, if we lose the field in this game, I'm not really quick enough to be able to escape back here towards the city to get cover from all of the tanks that are situated towards the ridgelines near where the enemies have spawned. So I'm going to make my way here down towards the south, which is something I don't usually do. Play very aggressively. Hopefully we can get some nice spotting assistance, whilst also using these ridgelines here towards this castle area, using our turret and hull armour, and yeah, trying to advance this battle into a win for our team. So the T34 and the enemy team, we get some beautiful assistance for spotting him out, as well as a shot into the side of his turret. Got to be a little bit careful these tanks don't decide to sort of look to their left and shoot me, so I'm going to try and keep my head on a swivel, or my turret on a swivel here. I think this T95E3 is wondering how the hell he was spotted so quickly. He is getting shot by a multitude of tanks. We get some more assistance there. Looks like he was trying to go off the bridge. Fortunately for us, he didn't, which allows us to get another damaging shout into him. And he subsequently gets taken out by our friendly Char 40T. Gonna poke up here, see if there's anyone waiting towards this castle area, and gotta be a little bit wary of tanks towards my right shooting me through the gap. However, we're going to try and get a shot into this AMX-30A. Unfortunately for us, we don't quite have enough of his turret there as he races into position. I get some more spotting assistance on that AMX-30A. However, I'm now the only tank left here, with the tanks all the way back in the southeastern corner supporting me. So fortunately for us, the 30A comes up after us. We can snap our turret round, get one into him. That's where gun handling skills improve your turret traverse speed, and yeah, it allows you to snap your gun round and take them out a bit quicker. FV4005 takes out the T34A in one shot, which we spotted, getting all of that assistance. And now the T95E3 comes after us. We'll hold down, put one into him. He misses his shot and he uses the smoke screen there to try and escape. However, we can still see he's there from the mini-map. So fortunately, when he is spotted again, we're able to get some more damage. T34A is above us. We go for the tracking shot and we are rewarded there with some more assistance thanks to the FV4005, who's doing some fantastic work there at the back of the map in the sort of GH9 GH0 location, and now this T35E3 is kind of stuck literally between a rock and a hard place, trying to find somewhere to escape. Probably should have just fought me and tried to get a couple of shells into my lower plate. However, it allows us to free farm, and we've still got all of our hit points with that big push play there to play with now as we come up. M50 Sherman bounces off us, and now we're just going to go full speed into these tanks. We have a 3 tank advantage, so we're going to push that. I'm going to try and go for a ram here on this Sherman. We can see here through the smoke there as we go into the first person sniper mode, and then we go for a nice bit of ram there. On lighter tanks you can deal some nice damage there with the weight of this heavy tank, and he gets taken out by the T95E3. Shot there on the char in the back of the map towards the north, and now we're just going to race into position using the mobility of this heavy tank, trying to get some extra last minute damage out of this game. Fire a chancey shot on the move because we do have run and gun. Unfortunately for us, it doesn't go in, but that FV4005, who seems to be having a cracking game, takes out that light tank, which is quite some shot considering that tank was going at a pretty decent speed. And now there's a full health, or nearly full health, Char 40T that we put that shot into, advancing on him, wiggling side to side at sort of 40 degrees, bouncing some shells. I think he is now reloaded. Put one into him, and we're going to go for a ram on this medium tank. Unfortunately for us, our power to weight isn't as good as that medium tank, which means that we're just going to be going round in a circle. However, we have enough mobility, even if he got to our side, to be able to sort of back up and get a shell into him. We take him out of the game, and there's just one enemy medium tank remaining. It's the T95E3. I'm hoping he reverses so we get the damaging shot here. He doesn't reverse up the whole way. I shoot my shot, and yeah, it goes into the border of the map. We might get another chance if he comes back out into this position. Don't really fancy driving all across the map just to get one more shot. He does come out, he puts one into our light tank, but it doesn't look like we're going to be getting any more damage in this game. But we made that big aggressive push play, used our armor, used our hit points and our alpha damage, and yeah, we pushed this game towards a win within the first couple of minutes with that big aggressive push towards the city. So that's it for the 4th gameplay, where we finish MVP, profit without a premium account again. That's a mastery badge, high caliber, 1706 base XP, 4 kills, 5.9k direct damage, 3.6k assistance, 740 blocked, showing you what this tank is all about in a 5 minutes and 17 second battle. Very, very good at bullying other tanks with poor penetration, fewer hit points, lower alpha damage. Just don't get surrounded. Be wary of tank destroyers, autoloaders, light tanks getting around you. Apart from that, you can bully tanks. Great hold down, and yeah, use your alpha damage to whittle down your opponent. So I hope you've enjoyed today's tank guide on the M103A2. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.